Hello everyone, it's Scott, and today we're back for our last day of March of the Machine spoilers. We got the rest of the cards from the set this morning, and we've got like 70 commons plus commons that came out. And what we're going to do today, rather than try to go through every single card, is what I've done is I've narrowed the list down to cards that I think have limited relevance and a few that have some standard relevance for you. So before we get started, though, thanks to Caffeinated Gamers for sponsoring our video series for March of the Machine. And remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this in the future. And we'll be doing some list videos here over the next few days. So let's get started with the last day of March of the Machine spoilers. So first we've got Angelic Intervention. For 1 and a white mana, you get an instant that target creature or planeswalker you control gains protection from colorless or from the color of your choice until end of turn. If it's a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So anytime we get a protection spell in white, that usually is a pretty good spell. Certainly in Limited, this is a very good card to have in your deck. But I think it has some standard playability as well, because people aren't necessarily in white expecting you to be able to protect a creature or a planeswalker from a spell that would destroy it. So I think this has got some potential limited, or definitely limited playability, and I think some standard playability as well. Next we have Attentive Sky Warden. For 2 and a white mana, you get a Phyrexian Core that's a 2/2 with flying, and whenever Attentive Sky Warden deals combat damage to a player or battle, transform up to 1 target incubator token you control. And the last piece there, with the ability, if you do damage, to transform an incubator token, I think that this makes it already limited playable as a 3 cost 2/2 with flying. But that helps as well, because you're likely going to see some incubator tokens in your limited environment, and this is just a way to flip those for free, and that's a great value piece. Next we've got Cut Short. For 2 and a white mana, you get an instant that says destroy target planeswalker that was activated this turn or tapped creature, and you can convoke it into play. So definitely in the limited environment, this is a go-to white removal spell, and the fact that you can convoke it can get this cost down to 0 potentially in the right situation. Next we have Infected Defector. For 4 and a white mana, you get a Phyrexian Knight who's a 4/3, and when Infected Defector dies, incubate 3. So I like that, even though it's a 5 cost spell, the fact that you get the incubator when it dies, it leaves value on the field. So certainly limited playable card for you. Next we've got Billy Rider. For 2 and a white mana, you get a 1/3 with double strike. If you're paying an extra mana for this, we've got a couple of cards that are 1/1s with double strike for 2 mana, but the fact that you're getting this as a 1/3 with double strike, and again, we've got ways to put counters on things, I think that makes it a little bit better. Certainly a limited playable card. Next we have Knight of the New Coalition. For 3 and a white, you get a 2/2 human knight with vigilance, and when Knight of the New Coalition enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 white and blue knight creature token with vigilance. So that basically you're getting for 4 mana 2 2/2s with vigilance, and I think that's a pretty good rate in limited for that ability. Next we've got Core Halberd. For 1 mana, you get an artifact that's an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance, and it's an equipped 1. So certainly in limited, a very good card to be playing, because it's 2 costs. You give something vigilance and +1/+1. Nice ability to have. And if we do have a dedicated equipment deck, which we kind of sort of got with Phyrexia All Will Be One, this is a card that for really low cost could go into that deck as well. Next we have Realm Breaker's Grasp. For 1 and a white mana, you get an enchantment that's an aura. Enchant artifact or creature. Enchanted permanent can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So this is a way of shutting off in standard a creature that has activated abilities, shutting those things down. It can't attack or block, so that's a good piece anyways. But the fact that you can also do that with artifacts is a nice effect as well, because we've got things that do to make some spells happen, and I think that's good in and of itself. All right, so let's move on from Realm Breaker. Next we have Sigiled Sentinel. For 2 and a white mana, you get a human knight That's a 2/2 with backup of 1 and vigilance. So, 3/3 for potentially a 3/3 for 3 mana with vigilance. That's a good rate for limited. Next, we have Sunder the Gateway. For 1 and a white mana, you get to choose, it's a sorcery where you get to choose 1. You can destroy target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. So this is what we would call a traditional disenchant ability with that limitation added on of non-token. And then you get to incubate 2 in that situation. Or you can incubate 2, then transform an incubator token you control. So basically for 2 mana, you can get a 2/2 as well. So I think that flexibility in this card definitely makes it limited playable and potentially has some standard playability because we do have a lot of Phyrexians that are artifacts, and because of that, if there is a truly dedicated Phyrexian deck, this would be a good sideboard card against that kind of deck. Next, let's move into blue, where we have Assimilate Essence. For 1 and a blue mana, you get an instant, counter target creature or battle spell unless its controller plays 4. If they do, you incubate 2. So this is an interesting counter spell. So you can counter it, but if your opponent is able to pay the cost of 4, then you get an incubator instead. So there's an upside with this spell. So I think that definitely makes it limited playable because you can have that. You could play this in the mid to late game. They've got plenty of open mana, but you play it so that you get the incubator token. Next, we have Halo Charged Scab. For 4 and a blue mana, you get a zombie, and that's a 4/4. And when Halo Charged Scab enters the battlefield, each player mills 2. Then you may put an instant sorcery or battle card from your graveyard on top of your library. So that ability for an extra mana basically to mill 2 and then bring back an instant sorcery or battle, is certainly unlimited. A good price to pay for getting that card back on top of your library. Next, we have Printing Champion. For 2 and a blue mana, you get a Bird Knight. That's a 2/2 with flying. So kind of the typical what we would see. But why I like this one better than most of the 3-cost 2/2 flyers is when Printing Champion enters the battlefield, you get to create a 1/1 blue and red elemental creature token. So really you're getting 2 bodies with 3 total power and toughness for the 3 mana in blue, which is a really good rate in blue because we typically don't see that often. Next, we have Protocol Knight. For 3 and a blue mana, you get a 3/4 Human Knight, and when Protocol Knight enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, put a stun counter on that creature if you control another knight. So if you've got another knight already in play, then you get to put a stun counter on it, and it will keep that creature tap for an additional turn, which I think is a nice limited ability. And certainly if we do end up with a dedicated knight deck, this is a potential top end card because it does something that would allow you to hopefully attack through and hopefully get in that lethal damage in that kind of game situation. Next, we have Stasis Field. For 1 and a blue mana, you get an enchantment. That's an aura, and it's an enchant creature. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness of 0/2, has defender, and loses all other abilities. So in limited, this is a really good card because it's 2 mana. Basically, whatever their best creature is, you can make it a 0/2 with defender, and if they can't get rid of the aura, then it's pretty much just a blocker for the rest of the game, and that's a huge advantage to you in those situations. Next, we have Zhalfirin Shapecrafter, excuse me. So Zhalfirin Shapecrafter. For 1 and a blue mana, you get an instant. That target creature has base power and toughness for 3 until end of turn, and you get to draw a card. So I like this as a surprise spell. Maybe you've got something that's a 1/1 or a 2/2, and they're attacking with something that they know should get through that, or at least kill your creature. Well, you play this as an instant. It's now a 4/3. Now maybe you can kill their creature, and you get the added bonus of drawing a card. So let's move on to the black cards that we got today. So we got Dreg Recycler. For 1 and a black mana, you get a 2/2 Phyrexian Beast. and that you can sacrifice an artifact or creature. Each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life, and you have to, again, tap it to do that. I talked a lot about the aristocrat style deck that we've gotten a few pieces for that go along with that Oni called Anvil deck that we already have. So this is a piece that potentially has some standard playability because it's a mechanism of tapping and sacrificing an artifact or a creature to get that activation of your Oni called Anvil. And that's a good value for you because you're getting that additional, opponent loses a life, you gain a life, tempo change with that sacrifice. Next, we've got Etched Host Doombringer. For 4 and a black mana, you get a Phyrexian Demon. That's a 3/5. And when Etched Host Doombringer enters the battlefield, choose 1. Target opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So that same kind of tempo thing that we just talked about with Dreg Recycler. Or choose target battle. If an opponent protects it, remove 3 defense counters from it. Otherwise, put 3 defense counters on it. So I really like that ability, even though this is a 3/5 for 5. But in the mid to late game, the ability to potentially flip a battle and not have to attack it, I think in limited definitely, or in sealed, it's a really good tempo play for you. I don't think it really has standard playability at this point, but that is a really nice ability that's tacked on to it that does leave a body behind, in addition to protecting a battle you're protecting, or reducing the defense counters on a battle you're attacking into. Next, we have Flitting Gorilla. For 2 and a black mana, you get a 2/2 with flying. That's a fairy rogue. And when Flittering Gorilla dies, each player mills 2. Then you may exile Flittering Gorilla. When you do, put target creature or battle card from your graveyard on top of your library. So again, in limited, this is a really good card. It's 3 mana, the 3 mana 2/2, but again, you get to mill some cards, get some stuff in the graveyard, and then hopefully bring back a creature or a battle to the top of your deck, and then have access to that on your next draw. Next, we have Ichor Drinker. For 1 black mana, you get a Phyrexian Vampire. That's a 1/1 with lifelink. And you can pay 1 black mana and exile Ichor Drinker from your graveyard, and you can incubate 2, activate only as a sorcery. So when it dies, it's got a purpose in your graveyard. Again, this is one of those cards that it has added value when it dies, and those are the kind of cards you want in sealed or limited to help push your game plan forward. Next, we have Ichor Shade. For 2 and a black mana, you get a 2/3 Phyrexian Shade. At the beginning of your end step, if an artifact or creature was put into a graveyard from the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Ichor Shade. So again, this is in a standard stamp. From a standard perspective, this could go in that Oni called Anvil deck, because you're likely going to be sacking an artifact or a creature almost every turn to an Oni called Anvil activation. So by doing that, you're actually at the end of each turn, then you're putting a +1/+1 counter on to Ichor Shade, which would over a few turns build it into a pretty large creature, and you're going to get those activations. And I'm as we look at more cards in black in particular, we've gotten now a bunch of them that seem to just kind of have some good synergy with that particular deck. Next, we have Unsealed the Necropolis. For 2 and a black mana, you get an instant. Each player mills 3 cards, then you return up to 2 creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Again, in sealed and limited, this is a good card. You're playing with 40 cards, not 60, so this is a very, for 3 mana, it's a nice way to go ahead and bring back 2 creature cards from your graveyard. And so if your opponent has been able to kill your best creature, you can bring it back, you can recast it, and that in and of itself usually is a good tempo shift in your direction. Next, we go into red, and the first card we have is Coming in Hot. For a red mana, you get an instant. Target creature gets +1 and gains first strike until end of turn and scry 1. So first thing about this, I think this has some standard playability because of the new Urabrask. We're looking for the ability to play 3 spells to flip Urabrask. This is a 1 mana spell that basically, with Urabrask on the field, you cast it, you get a red mana back. So basically, it doesn't actually cost you any mana to cast this particular spell. So I think that will make it potentially playable in that deck. Now, is it a 4-of? I don't think so, but a couple copies of it to, again, push that game plan with Urabrask to get it flipped, where you can do a lot of things against your opponent. In Limited, again, another good card because it's at instant speed, so after blocks are declared, you can give your creature +1 in for strike. So maybe in a trading situation now, your creature survives and theirs dies, and that's a nice tempo shift in that situation. Next, we have Marauding Dreadship. For 2 and a red mana, you get an artifact. That's a vehicle. That's a 4/1 with haste, so that means that you can crew it on the turn it comes into play. And when Marauding Dreadship enters the battlefield, you get to incubate 2, and then you can again crew it for 2. So the fact that for 3 mana you're getting a 4/1 vehicle with haste, not a terrible situation. But again, that fact in Limited where you're getting that incubator token as well, that's really helpful because you're getting something that in a turn or two, when you've got excess mana, you can go ahead and activate that incubator token, pay the 2, and transform it into that Phyrexian artifact creature. Next, we have Mirren Blade Splitter. For 1 red mana, you get an artifact that's an equipment. It has flash, which is important because that means you can play it onto a creature immediately as soon as it comes into play and play it on your opponent's turn to kind of tempo shift things again in your favor. So when Mirren Blade Splitter enters the battlefield, you get to attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and equip cost is 3. So I like this, particularly in Limited, that the flash ability of it. You flash this in, and now you're doing a couple of extra damage to a creature. Before you put it into play, your opponent thinks they're going to win that combat and kill your creature, not theirs, but now you kill theirs, and that's in and of itself a good enough card to see Limited play. And the fact that it attaches automatically is great value for 1 mana. Next, we have Shatter the Source. For 5 and a red mana, you get an instant with Convoke, and you get to choose 1. Shatter the Source deals 6 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle, or you can destroy a target artifact. And the fact that this is Convoked, so I'm looking at this in a Limited situation. You've got some creatures on the field, you can convoke this in, you can defeat a battle, you can go ahead and kill their best creature, or a planeswalker if they happen to have one. So I think that makes it Limited playable in a sealed or our draft situation. Next, we have War Train Slasher for 3 and a red mana. You get a Wolverine, that's a dinosaur, that's 4/3. It has Menace, and whenever War Train Slasher attacks a battle, double its power until end of turn. So if you're in a deck where in again that Limited environment or sealed environment where you're playing with a lot of battles, this is a really good card to have in it, because basically with doubling its power, if they cannot block it because they don't have 2 creatures to, you're doing 8 damage to that battle, and on one swing you're defeating every battle potentially that we've seen. So I think it's a good Limited card and potentially has some Limited playability too if battles becomes a thing where we're seeing a lot of battles see play, and you've got battles you really want to flip, and this is a good card because of the Menace that you can potentially just one-shot it and it's over. Next, we have Wren's Resolve. For 1 and a red mana, you get a sorcery. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until end of your next turn, you may play those cards. Great card. Great for Limited. It has standard playability as well. We're already using Reckless Impulse to do the same thing. So this means that when that card rotates out of standard in the fall, we've got Wren's Resolve to replace it in any decks that are using it. And again, very nice red ability, because you're gonna get hopefully 2 cards that you can play when that happens. So I like this. I think it's going to see some standard play. Next, we move into green with the last couple of cards for the day with Atraxas Fall for 1 and a green mana. You get a sorcery that says destroy target artifact, battle, enchantment, or creature with flying. So I really like this. This is a card that goes beyond what we've seen on sorceries like this in the past, where it was destroy an artifact or an enchantment, or maybe an artifact, an enchantment, or a creature with flying. But that added ability to destroy a battle too, I think, makes this not only limited playable, but if battles are a problem in standard or other formats, this is a card that you would put in your sideboard as a way to destroy battles. Next, we have Cosmic Hunger for 1 and a green mana. You get an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to another target creature, planeswalker, or battle. So again, another way to kind of defeat a battle quickly. You play this, you do 4 damage to it, or whatever your best creature's power is, and you can defeat it right then and there. So I think that is a fine ability. And this is certainly a card that normally would see limited play anyways in sealed or draft. Next, we have Overgrown Pest for 2 and a green mana. You get a creature that's a pest. That's a 2/2. And when Overgrown Pest enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a land or double-face card from among them and put that card into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So nice card here. So basically, you get a 2/2 body for 3 mana, and then you get to go look at the top 5 of your cards of your library to get a land that you need and or a double face card that you want to get into your hand so you can play it. So that in of itself makes it very limited playable, and I think there's even possibly some standard playability as well because of the effect that it gets. Next, we've got Portent Tracker for 1 and a green mana. You get a satyr that's a scout. It's a 1/1, and it has 2 abilities. So first, you can untap a target land. So tap this. So basically, this is a mana dork in essence, because you tap a land, get its mana, untap it, you can get that mana. That's a good ability in and of itself. Or you can choose target battle. If an opponent protects it, remove a defense counter from it. Otherwise, put a defense counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So it's another one of those interactions with a battle that we've seen several of throughout this common dump that we got today, where you're interacting with the battle without actually having to attack the battle. So I think that in of itself is a good ability on this. So I think certainly limited playable. And again, if we see battles become something that is very prominent in standard, then I think this is a card in green you'd have to consider playing. Next, we have our double face card of the day, and that's Bonded Herd Beast for 4 and a green mana. You get a 4/5 beast, and you can transform it for 5 mana as well. Again, only activate it as a sorcery, and if you do, you get Plated Kiln Beast. That's a Phyrexian beast. That's a 7/5 with menace. And that additional menace, certainly, this is, again, a card in limited. I like this card for any kind of limited format, whether it's draft or sealed, because you're going to be able to play this in the mid to late game, and then you can transform it, a turn or 2 later. Now it's a 7/5 with menace. That's a hard for anybody to block, because you're going to have to give 2 creatures to it, and most likely you're killing their creatures, and hopefully if they've got a lot of just small stuff on the board, then you're able to survive those combats. So it presents a difficult threat for your opponent to deal with. And our last 2 cards of the day are Serpent Blade Assailant for 2 and a green mana. You get an Elf Warrior. That's a 2/1, and you get backup 1, and it also has Death Touch. So my looking at this card, think of it as a 3/2 with Death Touch for 3 mana. Typically we get Death Touch cards that are 1/1s for 2 mana. So I think for that extra mana, you get that extra, +1/+1 to it. It makes it a lot better as a death touching creature, because now anything that's little you might possibly be able to survive. So if they've got some 1/1s on the field, well, those don't trade with Serpent Blade Assailant, and that makes it harder for them to, either attack through or defend that situation, because 1/1s, you're going to kill those things. All right, our last card of the day is Tangled Skyline. For 4 and a green mana, you get an enchantment, and when Tangled Skyline enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life, and you get to incubate 5. And Phyrexians you control have reach. So basically, for 5 mana, you get 5 life, and you get an incubator with 5 +1/+1 counters on it. And then on top of that, you can have your Phyrexians all have reach, which is a really nice ability. So depending on where we go with the Phyrexian deck, if there is some green in that, then I think this might be a sideboard option against decks like Angels, because we know there's going to be an Angel deck out there, because we got a number of good additional Angels to go with those that we already had. So I think this potentially has some sideboard possibilities in decks that are worried about, or if the format ends up being heavily a format that has a lot of creatures that have flying in it. All right, so that is our look at March of the Machine spoilers. Thanks for staying with us through all the videos. Remember to like and subscribe. We're going to do some top 10 videos or top 5 videos over the next few days to kind of get you to look at some of what I think are the better cards from the set as we move forward. So thanks for watching to the end of the video, and I'll see you next time.